If you're new to gacha games, you might download them because they're a free-to-play game. You'll think, oh great, this is a pretty good quality game considering it's free. Well, you've just started a journey into what could be possibly a very expensive trip for you. Because as you get addicted to these gacha games, generally what happens is that the developers have a process. They usually throw a lot of resources at you whilst you're new to the game through like codes or login bonuses. And obviously then you've got the story which you'll then slowly accrue more over time. But once you get to the end game, you pretty much have run out of all that stuff and you're really just waiting for updates and patches to get resources to roll for new characters. Now, if you're not a player that has saved resources and has budgeted them in a kind of a smart way to protect your account from either being power crept or some sort of critical new character coming out that you'll need, then you basically get faced with the cost of gacha games. And even though it starts as a free game, some of these characters, they can cost you up to $200 to $300 to guarantee getting. Obviously, sometimes it's not as much as that if you can get them early because it is RNG. But if you go to the full pity, then yeah, you're looking pretty close to the $300 mark, which is pretty crazy considering that's almost the same price as like 2 AAA games, maybe 3 AAA games, right? I think it would be 3 if I've got my numbers right. So yeah, you think you could buy the best games on the market 3 times per month. And yeah, and that's going to be pretty much equal to just one gacha character. And heaven forbid if you play multiple gachas. And it sort of made me wonder, well, why are they so expensive? Why have they been able or allowed to keep the prices so high? And there's a little bit to the price. We can't look at the price by itself because there's a couple of things that factor the price itself and also the value of the character. That both of those two things change depending what the developer does. So obviously the price is what it is, right? So they could reduce the price by offering a discount, but in Xenosaga Zero at least, I've never seen a discount on the actual price of their polychromes, unless you're buying it through like a third party or through Epic Game Store, you get like a little bit of a kickback there. But there is other ways that they decrease the price of their characters. Another way that they do it is they'll throw in polychromes, like free stuff with events during the patch, which we kind of just take for granted, right? But technically, if they were to inject more of those into the market, into the gacha market, let's say, then it is kind of subsidizing the cost of what you need to spend to get a character. So they can kind of offer discounts, not necessarily by reducing the price of those products, but just by giving players more polychromes. Now there is another way they can like throw in a free character like they're doing with Harumasa. That kinda, if you were going to normally buy Harumasa, then that would have used up resources that you had, so it does save you in the long run, which is kind of like a form of a discount. Some people might argue that's like a 2-for-1 special on Miyabi. Others, if you're a free-to-play player, you probably won't really care about what I've just said then, but for those at least that buy characters every once in a while or save mats for characters, it is a discount, assuming you were going to get him, right? So hopefully it's a good one. So it made me go, okay, well, that's how they can control the price. So why is it that they don't do more for the community and give us like more things so that it just doesn't look as high as $300 all the time, or we're not so complaining about the cost of the next character or having to worry and budget? Because like budgeting in video games isn't the most enjoyable thing, particularly in a gacha game, unless of course it's like a budgeting gacha game, which I'm pretty certain doesn't exist. But if anyone knows of one, feel free to put it in the comments below. And I realize it's because of lack of competition in the market. Now I think the only kind of close competitor to like the main player in the market, which is Hoyoverse, is Wuthering Waves developer. I think it's Kuro Games. Now I'm not a like active player of Wuthering Waves. I've played it, I got like Shorekeeper and that was pretty much it. But they were a bit more generous with their in-game rewards to roll for characters. And obviously you don't have to roll for the weapon banner, so it kind of was like definitely a more affordable gacha than say like a Xenosaga Zero or a Honkai Star Rail game. Now, why is it then that Hoyo still has high prices? Well, despite the Wuthering Waves developers, there's really no one else is like doing that has a quality game that's doing that. It's kind of like they all have kind of a indirect collusion going on where they kind of know if they compete with each other, then they're going to hurt each other's profits, right? Because people are going to play their games, particularly ones that love the those type of particular games, they're going to like always be there. They're never going to like disappear, right? Otherwise they wouldn't have the game in the first place around. So I think it's sort of like they'll look at like how the petrol stations used to do prices. Like you look down the road, see what they're charging, and then you'll keep yours around the same thing, and you try not to like signal too much of competitive behavior, otherwise fear of retribution that your competitor will then undercut you. So I think there might be indirectly, without like formalizing it, just being mindful not to outcompete each other in that particular regard, because it doesn't help their businesses, right? Which is a little bit unfortunate, as one of the main things I wanted to raise in today's videos. It would be good to see more competitors in the gacha space, particularly these like ones that are considered like the premium gacha games. I think that would improve like the things that people have been saying about improvement of stories, improvement of character designs, cutscenes, like mini games, like pretty much any aspect of the video game prices of the characters. I just feel like it would do a lot for that particular side. Now, the only alternative to that is that, okay, if they keep the prices high forever, it may discourage new players from getting into the game, particularly if they keep making the games harder, because as the games get harder and harder and harder, it kind of stops a new player being able to jump in and complete the endgame content, and they're probably more likely or not going to feel discouraged and not want to play the game. So there is kind of indirectly a thing that they're kind of balancing. They want to keep the prices high, right? They want to keep it at a good state that doesn't hurt their profit levels too much. Obviously, if they're competing, they don't want to outcompete by a lot unless they can get the market share of all the players, right? But then there's this other like counterbalance that they've got to keep. They have to make the content hard so people might buy the new characters, but they can't make it so much harder or discourage new players. And that's the really interesting like side that I've sort of been looking at in particular. I'm not going to cover in this video, it might be a later video, but I did find it very interesting that, well, if they want to do the concept of power creeping and then making content more difficult in gacha games to make us want to like buy the new characters or feel like we need the new characters to ensure we don't brick our accounts, is what I've sort of been described to by people in the community. They can't do it by too much, which is great for us. And I think if we know this, then we kind of brings the power back into our hands, because if we don't bite, then there'll be people that will quit naturally, right? As you play a game, eventually you'll get a little bit more tired of it and you might drop out, right? But then where one drops out, maybe a new player begins. Now, if that new player is jumping into something that's almost impossible to finish, do you think they're gonna like continue playing the game to the end? Probably less likely, unless they really like those challenges. But more often or not, people get discouraged and will quit early, which kind of will stop the supply of players, which will eventually hurt like the profit margins of some of these companies, right? Until they're forced to either improve the game to get more players in, or the old players back into the game, or fix the issue that's been raised. So if it's difficulty levels, they'll drop it back down, or they'll do something to fix it. And I think that kind of gives us a little bit of like hope that you don't have to feel like you need to budget specifically. I know people like to do that, or that you need to get certain characters to like ensure your account's not bricked. Maybe in the short term that's true, but I actually think in the long term it almost won't happen like that, because you got to remember new players coming in, and game developers have a big thing about ensuring that their game has longevity. And a big thing to longevity is not just keeping your current player base happy, but also keeping new players happy or bringing new players in. So if we got the new players coming in, I think we'll be fine. Anyway, that was the video for today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Yeah, if you disagree, then please feel free to comment. I'll try and respond to everyone's comment. I try and keep it kind of like fair. And if you got a good point, you got a good point. So I appreciate that. And I am Toxic Abyss, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks all. Bye-bye.